So I've decided that I'm going to start my journey of facing my past, facing my childhood, and then letting it go. You know, at this stage of my life, I think it's what's best for me. I think it's best for me to acknowledge the things that's happened to me, be able to share those things, because more and more every day I'm noticing that there are so many people out here that goes through the exact same things that I've experienced. Maybe not exactly, but very, very similar. And if there's any way that I can help anyone, if nothing else but to feel like someone else can identify with what you're going through, then that's my goal. You know, my childhood for a long time was sort of a blur. I just really couldn't remember much about my childhood. And there's reasons for that. And it's almost like I remember bits and pieces of being a little child. But a lot comes clear to me probably from about the age of 5. And I think the biggest thing that I've put into a box and kind of buried it for a long time was the major piece in my life, which was when I was 5 years old, when a stranger was brought into the home. Someone that the person that was raising me decided to start dating, and it was unbeknownst to me that this person was a predator. I knew it right away. And I knew it right away because of my intuition. Even at a very, very young age, my intuition has always been really, really strong. It really wasn't something that I could explain. I couldn't explain how I just felt certain things. I can feel certain energies. When people are giving off certain energies, I can kind of feel if someone has good or bad intentions for me. And it's pretty easy for me. It's not something that I have to work at. It's not something that I have to try to do. It happens naturally for me. Anyone that comes in my space, or even if they're not in my space, I could pretty much tell if someone has bad intentions for me. It's really not hard for me to distinguish at all. And to be honest, it's like I remember the very first time I met this predator. I remember that awkward, eerie feeling that I had. I remember that feeling clearly. And when you're at a young age, there's really not much you can do. If the person that's raising you is the adult and they bring someone into the home that is a predator. I remember being scared of this man, or male, I should say. I remember being scared of him, and I didn't know why. I remember not wanting to ever be alone with this male. I remember not wanting to really befriend this male. And he was always overly friendly. But the main thing for me was the awkward touch. There's a certain way that an adult is supposed to interact with a child. They're never supposed to touch a child in any kind of adult fashion. And they're never supposed to have that jittery, nervous feeling when they're touching a child. And I don't mean touching a child inappropriately at first. What I mean is, just if you touch a child on the arm, you can feel something weird when someone doesn't have good intentions for you. And I remember feeling that right away. But the person who raised me wanted to be in a relationship with this male so badly that the only thing that she focused on was him. She lost sight of the kids. She lost sight of young girls, her so-called daughters. She lost sight of that. Her focus was the male. And that became obvious extremely fast. I can recall times when this male used to, let's say we were passing one another, if I was going into a room and if he was leaving a room, I can recall him like patting me on my butt as I walk by. And you turn around because you're shocked, but he would keep walking, but he would kind of look back with a little smirk on his face, almost in a flirtatious way. And again, I was 5 years old. I was a child. So you really don't know what's going on. The only thing that you do know is that it's inappropriate, and you do know that it makes you feel uncomfortable. So for a long time, things just kept escalating. It just kept getting more and more inappropriate. It started with the taps on the behind. It went from that to us girls being in the shower one by one, and this male was allowed to say he wants to use the bathroom, and he was allowed by the person who was raising me, the person who I thought was my parent. He was allowed to come and use the bathroom while I was in the shower. It went to that level. The next level was he would pull the shower curtain back where only his face, you can just see his face. And he would literally watch me in the shower. He would turn the water on as if he was washing his hands, but he would be sitting there watching me. And I'm a child. I was 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. This went on for years. This person used to give weird hugs to where when he hugs you, he would kind of rub himself up against you. And this is absolutely a huge trigger warning. This entire thing, although I have a trigger warning at the beginning of this video, the things that I'm going to speak about are huge trigger warnings for those of you out there who have experienced being violated by someone that's brought in the home by a parent. These are things that I'm glad to say that I was courageous enough to say to the parent. I was courageous enough to say, these are the things that's happening. This person is making me uncomfortable. Is this right? I was asking those questions. Is this right for this person to do? Because it feels yucky. And unfortunately, I was being told that I'm paranoid. Unfortunately, I was being told that that's not what's happening, which I couldn't understand that, because the majority of the time, the person who was raising me was normally at work, and this male that was brought into the home, one minute he was visiting, the next minute he was moved into the home. So this became an everyday thing. This became the norm, not just to me, but also to my so-called siblings. And at the time, the youngest sibling was not even born yet. But this was happening to me and the older sibling, the older so-called sibling. This male used to just enter our room unannounced, even if we were changing our clothes. If we were changing our clothes, this male used to just stand in the doorway and act like he was talking to us and tell us, yeah, go ahead, you can finish changing your clothes, and just would watch us. Now, these things were most definitely told to the person that was raising me. But again, every time when you would make an announcement that this is happening, sometimes you would be sent off to other family members' house for the weekend or something like that to get you out of the house. I don't know if that was a distraction. I don't know what that was. I don't know what that was actually. But the situation was never addressed. The situation kept being brushed off, and it just kept escalating and escalating. And even to this day, I never could understand why it was never addressed. So you have to think about it. Think about being a 5-year-old child. You're in what, first grade or something like that? Think about being a child that's telling the parent that these things are happening, but nothing is being done about it. Think about that for a minute. Think about what that must feel like. Think about how a 5-year-old young girl must feel telling her so-called mother that her partner is doing inappropriate things that's making her uncomfortable. Her partner is doing inappropriate things that she knows is wrong, and she wants help because she's 5, so she can't defend herself. She's 5. She doesn't know what's going on. She's 5. The only thing she knows is that it's not right. Just think about that for a minute. And I'm saying these things because I know there are people out there who's going through something like this. And I know how it feels to feel defeated. I know how it feels to feel as if you're going through some things and there's nothing you can do about it except accept it. Now, what child wants to accept being inappropriately touched? What child wants to just accept the fact that their guardian, their so-called parent, refuse to help them, refuse to acknowledge it, refuse to hold this person accountable, refuse to remove this person from the home? Their relationship just got stronger, actually. So much so that I remember our family being evicted time after time after time. I remember that clearly. I remember coming home from school and the sheriffs had changed the locks. I remember that clearly. You come home from school, you have no idea what to do. You know, my so-called older sister and I, we had no idea what to do. The only thing that we knew was the doors were not able to be accessed. And so we did what we could do, which was go to the top of the stairs by the roof inside the building. And we just sat there in the dark, waiting for the parental figure to get off work. And we lived in Brooklyn, and the parental figure worked in Manhattan. So we would get off school, and the parental figure would not get home until like nighttime. But I remember one time specifically that out of the dozens of times that we were evicted, I remember we were sent to live with my uncle and my aunt, and the parental figure, by then my youngest so-called sibling was born. So the parental figure left us. She left us at my uncle and aunt's house, and her and the predator and the younger sister, they all moved in with the predator's mom. She left us there. Now the thing about it is, she prides herself with the fact of, I gave money to your aunt and uncle for things that you guys needed. But it was bigger than that. It was much bigger than that, you know? It was almost like, where was the loyalty? It was almost like, if we all get evicted out of the home, I would assume that we all would have to stay together. Where we had to go live at my aunt and uncle's house, it was a safe home. You know, it was a safe home. But imagine your parental figure just pretty much bailing on you for a predator, for someone who inappropriately touches all the females in the house, for someone who watches you in the shower, for someone who taps you on your behind every time you walk by them, For someone who comes to your room unannounced and opens the door while you're changing your clothes. For someone who you have spoken up to your parent, to your so-called parent, to your parental figure, the person who's supposed to be your guardian. You've spoken up to that person and you have made it very clear to that individual what was happening to you. Imagine this person just dropping you off somewhere because you all were evicted, and they don't stay with you, which is their brother's house. So it would have been safe for them to stay there with you. But they choose to go with the predator, and they pick one child, the youngest one, which is understandable because that child was very small. But they pick one child to go, which is the child that her and the predator share, and they just disregard the other two. And maybe once a month or something like that, I can't really remember, once every 2 weeks, what they would do is they would meet you at McDonald's, get a little update on you to find out what's been going on, but more so to find out what's been going on in the house and to give you a few bucks. No hug, no I love you, but just a few bucks and a little conversation on an update as far as what's going on inside that house, what's being said. This went on for a long time. You know, little by little, I'm unpacking certain things that I've experienced because I've buried them for so long, and it's so difficult to revisit these things. But the only way I'm going to be able to extract these things out of my system, acknowledge them, heal from them, and extract them and let them go is by talking about it, is by sharing it, is by hopefully allowing my experience to help someone else, to know that you're not alone, to know that there's someone out there who can identify what you're going through. It's horrifying. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. It's a horrifying experience when you are a child, a young girl, and you're experiencing being inappropriately handled by a predator, and it is okay with your parental figure. They are allowing it just so they can stay in that relationship. You know, people would laugh really hard at me being celibate and me not being in a relationship for so long. Once I got out of my last relationship, that was about, I think it lasted about maybe 5 years or so, but I bent over backwards to make sure that my daughter would never, ever experience any kind of inappropriate mishandling from anyone. I made sure I put my life before hers. I made sure she understood that, and everybody around her understood that, and not just her but my boys as well understood that if anybody were ever to try to inappropriately mishandle my kids, they would have to go through me. And I'm proud of that because I feel like every parent should do that for their child. You know, these things are damaging. They are damaging to you when you're young. They are damaging to you when you're an adolescent, when you're an adult, and then when you get up in age. It affects you. It never stops affecting you. But at this stage, I just feel like enough. I feel like I'm ready to face those things so I can let those things go. Because enough of giving these things power, enough of allowing these things to affect me. You know, for a long time, I didn't know what love was because I was afraid of love. I was afraid of speaking up about anything, especially because of the grand finale of when everything got really, really technical. And this is a super trigger warning because I remember the day that this predator finally decided to make a move on me. By then, I believe I was in junior high school or middle school, whatever you want to call it. But at the time, my guardian, my parental figure, she was taking driving lessons. I remember it clearly. And she was headed out to go on one of her driving lessons. And after she left, I was laying in bed. I had my room and the older sibling had her room right next door. I believe she was asleep. So I was asleep. Now I was laying in my bed. It was in the morning. I was just laying there, but my eyes were closed. You know how in the morning when you haven't quite woken all the way up, but you're still laying in bed? That was my situation. So this man came in my room. And again, trigger warning. Her man, my parental figure, my so-called parent, her man came into my room. He was walking around, I guess, moving things around, trying to see if I was asleep. So I pretended to be asleep. I didn't know what to do. I just wanted him to leave. So I pretended, okay, if I pretend to be asleep, maybe he'll just go back out. Because again, as I said, even at that age, he was still entering the room without any announcement, just walking in your room. This man then proceeded to pull my covers up from the bottom of the bed. He proceeded to crawl up my bed. The next thing you know, I could feel my pants, my pajama pants. I could feel my pajama pants coming down. Now, this is difficult to talk about because I haven't really talked about this in a long time. But this is the only way I'm going to get past this, is acknowledging it so I can put it behind me and taking my power back from these situations and hopefully inspiring someone else to do the same. Because these kinds of things can cripple you if you let it. But I remember him pulling my pajama pants down, and I felt frozen. I didn't know what to do. I know that my parental figure, my so-called mother, had just left to go on her driving lessons, and I was frozen. I was in shock. I did not know what to do. Now, as he's pulling my pants down, my pajama pants down, I didn't know what to do. Right when he got my pants kind of down to my ankles, I just freaked out. I just totally freaked out. I just started kicking. I don't know why I wasn't screaming, but I just started kicking. I was kicking really wild. I was yanking at my pajama pants, pulling them back up, and I was kicking at him. I was kicking at his face, and he jumped up out of the bed, and it's so terrible that I can actually visualize it. I can visualize it. I remember him being so nervous. I remember him putting his finger over his lips saying shh, and he just backed out the room. But I remember when he was pulling my pajama pants down, I distinctly remember him. With one hand, he was pulling my pajama pants down, and with the next hand, he was trying to touch my private area. And I think that's what freaked me out the most when he did that. And that's what made me flip out and just start kicking. Now, for those of you who have a child in middle school, in junior high school, or have a child and you remember them being in junior high school, remember how young they are. Remember how innocent they are. Remember that. It was a total nightmare. I remember him backing out of the door, and I just jumped up and I started getting dressed. I remember getting dressed so fast. I don't even remember what I put on. I just threw anything on. I remember running out the door. I remember running to the bus stop. And at the time, I lived in what they call the 90s in Brooklyn. We were living over a beauty salon. I remember being very close to the bus stop, and I ran to the bus stop. I got on the bus. I didn't know where I was going, but I ended up being at my uncle and aunt's house, the same house that we stayed at when we were younger. I remember going straight there. And I went straight there because my uncle was the only person that I could think of that I could trust. And so I went straight there. And as soon as I got there, I made sure that I told my aunt what happened. She was the one who answered the door. I was open and honest with her, and I told her what happened. Well, she did the right thing, and she called my uncle, and she told him right away what was going on. Well, he did the right thing. He put us all in the car, and he went back over to our apartment to confront my parental figure, to confront my so-called parent. Now, the outcome of that is a nightmare, because what she did was, when my uncle, he kind of lost it, he kind of bossed up, and he was saying it from his chest. He was saying he wanted to fight. He was telling me to grab my things. He was telling my so-called mother that he wanted me to move in with him. She was telling him, no, I'm not going anywhere. She was telling him, get away. She was protecting the predator. So much so that she put the predator behind her and stood in front of him. And then she pushed the predator into another room and stood in front of the door to protect him. My uncle at the time told her if she protected him, he would never speak to her again. And she said, that's fine. And she said if he took me out of the house, she would call the police on him. Now, mind you, all of this was shocking. Every single part of it was a complete shock. Every single part of it was a nightmare. Imagine being that young and you're in the middle of it all. When he asked me, tell them what happened. Tell your so-called mother what happened. And when I told her, she did nothing. She didn't do anything. She protected the predator. She pushed she first stood in front of him, and then she pushed the predator in the room and stood in front of the door to protect him. She wouldn't even look at me. She wouldn't believe me. She wouldn't even acknowledge what I had just told her I went through. Her concern was the predator. Her concern was his safety. Her concern was making sure my uncle didn't pound him up. Imagine what that does to a young girl. Because, yes, she made me stay there. She did not care about my safety. She did not protect me. She made me stay in that house. She did not let me go with my uncle, which I didn't understand. She made me stay there. I don't know why. Imagine what life was like for me after that day, staying in that house while she's still cooking and serving his food on a platter, on a tray, sometimes making us serve him his food. Imagine you have to serve your predator food on a silver platter, literally a silver platter. Imagine that. After they violated you, after your parent protected them. She never spoke about this again. She never acknowledged it. She never spoke to me about it. It was like it never happened. Matter of fact, the only thing she did say to me was, let's put it behind us. That's all I remember hearing her say. Let's put this behind us. And that's exactly what I was forced to do. Put that terrifying situation behind me. So I started spending the night out at a friend's house constantly. Spending the weekend here, spending the weekend there. Spending a week or two at my cousin's house in Queens. I was just always finding somewhere to go. I was always finding somewhere to be. Somewhere safe. Somewhere away from him. Somewhere away from her. Anywhere was better than home to me. So yeah, it started making me lash out. It started making me feel unprotected. It started making me feel like if this person ever touches me again, I may actually have to get physical with this person, because obviously I don't have any help. And obviously she wants to be with this person so bad that she's going to allow him to stay. She's going to not just cater to him, she's going to force us to cater to him as well. She's going to make me forget that this happened. That's when I start whooping up on him. I'll just be honest with you guys. So people can call me aggressive or anything they want. But what would you do? What would you do if your so-called parent is allowing her partner to handle you inappropriately? What would you do if your so-called parent prioritizes the predator's safety over yours? What would you do? Would you not fight back? I don't mind being called aggressive. Once I had to go through something like that and my skin had to toughen and I had to understand I had to protect myself, that's fine. I can be called aggressive all day long, because from that moment on, I didn't allow people to take advantage of me to the point of physically trying to harm me. So yes, I most certainly started fighting back. I started fighting back for me. I started fighting back because I was the only one willing to truly protect myself. You know, no one could ever make me feel convinced that I'm crazy because I turned being a victim into being a survivor. No one could ever make me feel crazy because I had the courage to stand up. I had the courage to speak out. I still have the courage to stand up and to speak out. I will never be quiet about something like being taken advantage of. I will never be quiet about something as horrendous as your so-called parent allowing these things to happen to you. You know, as I make this recording, a rush of emotions are going through me right now. And again, I try my best to be transparent. My hands are shaking. I'm stumbling over my words. But if this is what I need to do to get this point to anyone out there who goes through this, who feels alone, who feels judged, because believe me, it is the most degrading thing in the world to be victimized and to make people make you feel like you're in the wrong. For those around you to not believe you, for that same parent who protected the predator to then go around telling everyone that you're a liar just to protect their relationship, just to protect their image. That's the sickest thing in the world to me. That's how I feel. There's no nice way to put this. And believe me, I don't have animosity because I'm more focused on the healing. I'm not focused on blaming. I'm not focused on anything. But my story is my story, and the truth is the truth. No one can take away from me what I have experienced. No one can take away from me the fact that I hold myself responsible for helping the next person. You know, again, I run into some really extraordinary people in this world. People who are speaking about their situation so that they can help someone else. And it inspires me to be a part of that. It inspires me to tell my story so that someone out there who's sitting alone, who's feeling vulnerable, someone out there who's feeling blamed, who's just feeling like the whole world is against them, I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to survive something horrendous like that and for all of it to be turned on you. Even the other siblings who has had it done to them just so they can fit in the family. I don't want to fit into a family that bad. I don't want to fit into a family that will not lock arms and protect me as a child or even as an adult from a predator. I don't want to be a part of any kind of family dynamic that the image of the family is more important than the truth. is more important than getting justice for a child. This is extremely, extremely difficult for me to speak on. But I know I have to for myself. I know I have to for someone else. And I thank those out there who inspire me to be strong enough to share my story, to be strong enough to help someone else, to be strong enough to let people know that I identify with you, to be strong enough to heal. These are the dark secrets in my life. And it's not easy sharing those dark secrets with others. But I'm willing to do that. I am absolutely willing to do that because all these people that did not protect me, they have no idea the impact that it's had over my life all these years. A family full of women, no protection. A family full of men, only one person protected me. Out of all the women in the family, only one person, the quote-unquote in-law. These were the two people that protected me, or tried to. I don't want to be a part of a family to where when someone does stand up for you, you guys protect the predator. But I forgive you. I forgive all of you, even the male who has passed away. I forgive him as well because I have to forgive him so I can be able to forgive myself and move forward. Because this is not about him, it's not about them, it's about me, it's about us. Those of us out there who are called crazy because we've been through traumatic experiences and we turned being a victim into being a survivor, regardless of how we were dragged through the mud, especially females. And this is no slight to the males, but females, when these kinds of things happen, next thing you know, family members start calling you fast as if it was your fault. It's the most horrendous thing you can live through. So for those of you out there who are going through this, you're not crazy if you choose to take your life back, to face your fears, to face these dark secrets that we've had to bury and just live with. You're not crazy if you decide to take your life back, unbury these secrets, face them, and move on, regardless of upholding the image of the so-called family. We're not crazy if that's not our priority. We're not crazy for that. We're courageous. I know I feel courageous, even though I've gone through some horrific things. And that's just one thing that I'm speaking of at this time. I'm absolutely not crazy for that. And if you've gone through horrendous things, if you've been called a liar, if you've been called fast, if you've been made to be the culprit instead of the victim, instead of the survivor, you're not crazy either. We deserve to heal. We deserve to share our stories. We deserve to lean on each other. We deserve to let one another know that we understand and we can identify. We deserve to heal. And we are not crazy for that. I forgive all of you, but you most certainly will have to stand before the Most High. I'm not crazy because I believe in justice. I'm not crazy because I believe in healing. I'm not crazy because I believe in moving on. And if you've gone through these kinds of things and you're still standing today and you're still healing and you're still courageous, you're not crazy either.